Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out my channel again. Today I want to talk about a problem that I had over the winter, and I've talked about it on a couple different occasions, I believe. And it's a 2001 Buick LeSabre. And you can see I've got the transmission out, and instead of me tearing into this transmission and learning as I go, it didn't look too difficult. However, I have a local tranny shop, real good guys, and for 300 bucks they redid the transmission for me. When the transmission went out in the car, it was in the fall. So we parked the car, and I thought that I would just replace the transmission whenever I got the money. So what I did, knowing that I wanted to make sure that the car stayed top notch as far as it's running and everything else that I've replaced, being in the Northeast through the winter and having a gravel driveway like I do, cars have a tendency to rust whenever you just leave them sit. Leaving cars sit really hurts in the Northeast. We also don't have the heat to keep things dry, so whenever things get wet, they have a tendency to stay wet, especially under the car. So going back to what I was doing, and that was starting the car in the winter during the cold months and letting it warm up, the thermostat open, cleaning all the snow off the car. And even though the transmission was bad, it would still drive. You had to manually start it in first gear, and once it got going, you had to manually shift it to second. So I would take it around the big country block that we have out here, which is probably about 4 miles. And I did that usually once a month. What I found one time, though, during the whole polar vortex thing, was that the car didn't want to move. I was trying to pull it forward. I wasn't going to drive it this day. I was just trying to pull it forward because having a gravel driveway, because of the thawing and the rain and then the snow and the freezing and all that, there was a couple of valleys that had formed underneath the wheels and the tires where I had it parked. So I was trying to move it from the location that it was sitting in because the polar vortex was here. I think it was minus 20 this day. Plus I was trying to keep the battery charged, obviously. That's another reason that I was doing this. But as I tried to rock the car, it just didn't want to move. So I grabbed the steering wheel and I put some pressure to it to turn the wheel. And I knew that the wheels might be frozen to the ground a little bit, so I put a little bit more pressure to it and something popped. And then I had no power steering. I had no noise, no leaks, nothing. I just had no power steering. Now I was concerned about what I had done. I figured that I messed up the spool valve and the rack and pinion. There's basically a sensor, that spool valve is, that knows how much movement you're doing at your steering wheel and how much pressure is being exerted, and it applies helpful pressure from the power steering pump to get the rack and pinion to turn your wheels. So I thought maybe something was messed up in that. When I took it to the tranny shop, I just happened to make mention to them that, oh yeah, I'm going to have to look at that rack and pinion also before I bolt everything back up in the transmission. Whenever I made mention of that, he said, what happened? I said, it was very cold out. And whenever I tried to turn the steering wheel and something popped and I just don't have power steering anymore. And he says, it's your pump. And I said, how can you be so sure? And he excused himself from the conversation for a second, walked over to a shelf. He came back with a power steering pump pulley with a shaft attached to it where the shaft had been sheared completely off. And he says, I had a customer a couple years back with the exact same symptoms. It was cold out. They were in mud and they turned their steering wheel and something popped and they didn't have power steering any longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can tell if that's the problem. Now if you don't know, on these 3.8s, the power steering pump's right there. Now you can see I have the belt off and it's kind of blocking the pulley. And the pulley is right there, right where my flashlight is shining on. Now, you can do this under the car, which is probably the easiest. What you do is you take off the skirt that keeps debris and stuff from going into the car. And since I've got the transmission out, I want to show you because it's a little bit easier that way. If you get your power steering belt off your car, like I did here, just reach up and pull on your pulley. Look how that comes out. I don't know if you can tell, but I know my hand's slightly in the way, but your pulley shouldn't do that. So I need a new power steering pump. So that's something I wanted to show you. If you are turning your steering wheel in your car and your tires and wheels are giving you some sort of resistance, like it's up against a curb. Maybe you live in the city and you've parked too close to a curb, and something pops and you do not have power steering. Usually it happens, I'm assuming, when it's cold, where it's really hard to push that power steering fluid in the first place. And now with the resistance that I had with the wheels frozen to the ground, it just caused that shaft to snap inside the power steering pump. So hopefully this helps out, and hopefully I've edited this down to where it's a reasonable video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it as always. Bye.